Hello YouTubers, I want to welcome you to another edition of new guitar releases. And I'm pleased to announce that I've completed and released my 360th album, right? And for those who aren't aware, I basically play guitar and use guitar loops on the fly and bass emulation on guitar to create instrumental music, which I consider kind of film music, if you like. Basically, music that would remind me anyway of film music or something I'd want to hear in a film. For example, now all my music's improvised on the spot, and I guess it allows me to create a lot of albums. You know, now you never know what you're gonna get, but sometimes you get some real magical moments that you wouldn't otherwise get. You know, if you had worked out that music ahead of time, I guess. And I'm always surprised, you know, in what direction, musical direction it takes me. Alright, so this album is Modern Guitar Volume 360, Connection Speed. Okay, and the reason it's called Connection Speed is, well, let's take a look at the album cover. And there it is, it's just a public domain photo with the bridge. You can see there in the kind of lighting that it has there. And it kind of reminded me of that, kind of, you know, fiber optic type of thing. And therefore connection speed, you know, using fiber optics for data transmission and that kind of thing. So that is the album cover, and that's kind of inspired the title. And it's made up of 13 tracks, right? Which is quite a bit, really, in comparison to some of my other albums, you know, which have 9, 10 to 11 tracks. So this one came out to 13 tracks. And so let's start. What I'll do is I'll, you know, just skip through some of these tracks. We'll go through each one, and I'll try to give you any kind of insight that I can, you know. Now, I won't play the entire album, which is actually, sounds pretty smooth, you know, one track leading into the other and so on. Whereas here it's kind of cut, you know, and I'll fast forward and those kinds of things. Alright. So let's take a listen to track 1, right, which is here. So this is just a straight guitar, you know, nothing fancy. So that kind of sets up the theme for the album. There's real basic, just that clean guitar, which I really like, you know, because it's basically pure, you know, guitar sound wise. Not too many effects and things. All right, let's move on to track 2. A lot of delayed guitar here. There you can hear the delay on the guitar. Yeah, you can hear the delay on the guitar as that clean kind of melody is played over the delayed guitar tracks that kind of create the rhythm. And you can hear on that clean guitar the delay, right, repeating. Okay, let's hear that. So there you've got 2 or 3 different tracks. You have 2 or 3 different clean guitar tracks here. And that is actually part 1, and it'll actually reappear as part 2 of track 8. But for right now, that's just track 2. Kind of a bigger introduction to the album than the first track. Alright, let's move on to the third track here. Okay, now this track is kind of interesting, at least for me, because very much I had been working on chord voicings and kind of using modes I don't usually use. Okay, and rather than being strummed, they're kind of plucked, almost like a piano. And so there, and then on top of that, a melody, which is real basic, just a clean guitar. So let's take a listen to that. Yeah, I really like that track, and a little different for me, just the idea of the chord voicings, being real clear as well. Alright, let's move on to track 4 here. Okay, and here it's the same kind of thing, the same kind of concept, is that the chords there, especially on the low end, are using chord progressions I don't usually use. They're part of a mode, and then basically playing on top of that. So let's hear how that develops. atmosphere, if you like, or mood develops. Alright, let's move on to track 5. Here you go. Okay, now this track features basically delayed guitar, which I really love. I love the sound of that. And creating layers with different delay patterns, if you like, and note patterns, right? So this is kind of an example of that. Let's take a listen to it a little more here. And I should mention, well, I've been using the delayed guitar things for a long time, really. However, well, it turns out I wasn't really playing in time all the time, especially on earlier albums. Eventually, I got a MIDI clock which syncs all my delays together, to certain beats per measure, and that helped out tremendously, and also taught me to kind of play those delayed lines in time, whereas before it was kind of, it sounded like a delay, but it just wasn't in time with anything else in the music, I just, wasn't aware of that, I guess. So this is something I learned over time. And you can kind of hear it here. Okay, let's take a listen. So right there, you can hear there's several different delay patterns, but they're synced together to sound as one, basically. Let's take a listen a little more. Yeah, I just really like that sound. Let's move on to track 6 here. Alright, now this was kind of messing around with a guitar synthesizer sound, but kind of an older one, like a guitar organ, if you like, an organ sound. Remind me anyway of a very much kind of a carnival-ish kind of sound, like that you'd find in like a late 70s movie. Let's take a listen to it. Okay, let's move on from there. Track 7. Oh, yeah. Now listen, I really like this track. I like the mood that it creates and things. And, yet there aren't too many chords in it, quite frankly. But it's kind of this repeating rhythmic pattern. And it creates this mood atmosphere that I just really like. Let's hear it. There's that rhythmic pattern. Dun, 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 dun. And it had, of course, a little guitar synthesizer there. But I really like that rhythmic pattern there. Alright, next, which remember is part 2 of track 2. Let's take a listen to that. Different delay patterns there. Let's move on to track 10. Okay, now moving on to track 9, which I really like because it's I'm using the guitar sound kind of as a bass sound, which I hadn't really done before. So let's take a listen to that. So there I'm playing, I'm kind of a clean, lead lines, little arpeggios and things over the synthesized bass line. Okay, that gives it kind of an eerie type sound. Alright, let's move on. Okay, now here's track 10, and it's called Morning, and it's kind of an uplifting track in a way. A lot of delayed guitars and things. quite a few layers there, different guitar ideas. That's a guitar synthesizer. And remember, I had kind of problems as far as adjusting the volume of the guitar synthesizer tracks, and it can be clearly heard here. Had I to do it again, like do it now, I'd be able to adjust the volume, of the guitar synthesizer. But at that time, I hadn't really learned to do that, and you can clearly hear it here. And it's okay, it works out. I'm just saying that could be one thing I could have worked on. Alright, now let's take a listen to track 11, which is called Wind. And here, again, with the delayed guitar patterns that are synced together. Let's take a listen to that. There's a clean guitar over it, which I really like, just the phrasing of it, of the clean guitar. Yeah, I very much like the phrasing of the clean guitar over it, kind of floating above the delayed guitars. And here, one thing I would have hoped for, but I hadn't done it yet, is separating the bass sounds. They're still going through the guitar amp, so they weren't quite as pronounced. I rectified that in later album I just heard. So anyway, but I do like this track very much. Let's take a listen. Okay, so that clean guitar part, a little more difficult than you would think, because it's, it's the timing of it, to get that kind of floating feeling is a little more difficult, mostly timing wise. Okay, let's move on to track 12. And track 12 I use this kind of strange kind of octave synthesizer kind of bass sound. Very unusual, really. But let's take a listen to it. So I could see this in an action film, you know, or a horror film kind of thing. Let's hear it. Okay, so primarily a guitar synthesizer track, and yeah, to me, from what I was hearing, very much something you'd find in a action scene or horror scene. Very vaguely inspired by films by John Carpenter, for instance. Okay. Okay, and track 13 closes out the album, and so it's again, if you'll remember, the first track was this kind of just pure, clean guitar. Well, it's the same thing here with the last track, you know. And in a film, you'd often find the same kind of thing, you know, when everything's resolved and then things go back to normal, what have you. So let's take a listen to that. Okay, so it's kind of an unusual chord progression, and at that time that's what I've been working on. You know, I'm always trying to learn new chords and chord progressions and things. So, and here the chord structure is kind of unusual. Normally they'd almost be like random chords, but it made for this progression, which I found very interesting. And that closes out volume 360, Connection Speed. Overall, I think it's a very good album, especially considering everything's improvised, you know, on the spot there. Ideally, I would have wanted to hear maybe some bass emulation be more isolated, I guess. And that happens in later albums. But overall, I really like this album, and I imagine it to be kind of like a soundtrack to a film, you know, creating the different moods and atmosphere of different scenes and that kind of thing. So there we go. That's volume 360. And obviously the next album would be 361. And this album has already been submitted and distributed. So you should be able to find it on, Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, music, and so on and so on. And overall, I'm very pleased with it. There's some really solid musical ideas on it. Alright, and for me, it also, gives me a chance to get my music out there and kind of a release, so I'm not just creating all this music and it's just kind of piling up, So it's very nice I get a chance to release it. Alright, very good. See you next time. Okay, bye.